morning, folks. This is Talking One here on WSN, your content capital. Sean Michael Small here, coming at you in full HD because we are the only station in this nation broadcasting in HD. And of course, the debate continues. There are a lot of stories, a lot of tit for tats in the parliamentary debates of the budget presentation, which some of which you do wonder to what extent is it really necessary within the budget, but then it's technically tied to some of the points that's being made by both sides. And the irony, of course, is the debates by everybody else is far more detailed than what the minister himself gave us, which one could argue might be too scant of information, even for an overview. I can't say a brief overview because he took 5 hours, give or take. So, but we do have some things to get into. Now, some bad news, the good lady herself is not here. However, we do have someone to replace her, but we'll save that for later. Let's kick off this morning's Daily Review. And the first thing that I want to get into is that I spoke about protests happening over the weekend, Granville, Cedros area. And WASA has also warned, at around the same time, relatively speaking, about the fact that, look, water production in Horse Reservoir is low and the dry season is coming up. So we're warning you in advance, the nation, although particularly those communities that depend on the Hollis Reservoir, but potentially other communities, right, that just be ready for some difficulties. Because at the end of the day, more wells and water sources are being found, but it doesn't seem to be fast enough for the challenges, for the new challenges to our water supply. And now WASA is basically saying, well, we made the people aware, we made the councillors, the local government officials aware of what our plans were, what our intentions were, because there is a wider area being supplied by the Granville plant. And basically, only 50% of the required water is produced by that water supply. So what they tried to do was, they tried to boost supply at certain areas at the expense, areas at the end of the water supply, at the expense of what I assume is some of the areas protesting now they have not water in 2 weeks. And from what I understand, the very day of the protests, it is reported that the water flow was going to be switched back. Now, I don't know if it means that the switching would actually happen on that day, it will start, and then, of course, as WASA has said, I don't know to what extent it's true for this plant as opposed to the larger water supply situations that happened in North and in South in July and late August this year, or mid-August this year. But in those situations with Carney and with Desalcott, it took 48 hours or so for the water pressure to come up. So I don't know if the residents in Granville, in Cedros, had to wait for the water pressure, or if the water pressure was now coming on stream at the day of the protest itself. And that could be why it would take so long, 2 weeks, to go, well, we'll divert all the water to one area and we'll divert all the water back to the other areas. It might take a few days for the pressure to increase sufficiently to hit every house on the line, because from practical experience, I know what it's like. Water could be on. The closer you are to the station, the better your pressure is. And the farther you are from the station, well, you might not actually get water pressure for a while. And a while could mean hours or maybe a day or two. And, well, I know this because some of my family members have to go through that. That's just the reality if you are at the end of the line, the water pressure will be last to reach you. So WASA is basically saying they have been in regular communication. This was the plan. People were made aware of the plan. They're not saying that the situation has been politicized, but the implication is if everybody is aware of what's going on, and I assume the unspoken assumption is that they did not protest. And maybe they did, and WASA is not saying that they had anything to protest, but I would assume we will be told if they disagreed with WASA's plan and if an alternative possibility was feasible. But we haven't been told anything like that. So it seems as though the implication of, well, we informed everybody. Now that also is relative. Everybody could be those in the community that listen to consultations that they were able to reach with their distribution channels. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were able to reach everybody. And the people who are protesting could be the people who weren't aware of what's going on despite efforts to communicate, because, and one could argue it's similar in other parts of the world, it's not unique to here, but I find in TNT we have a very serious deficit of distributing information. But with that said, they also claim that local government representatives knew what was going on. The implication, of course, is some of those same representatives were either encouraging, were a part of, or gave some sort of approval to the protests. And I'm not saying that it's been politicized to make it into some big political brouhaha. The point I'm trying to make is, on one side, you have an organization trying to do the best it can with a practical plan, because I don't think you can't do one day. I'm pretty sure the water pressure doesn't work like that, right? If you try to switch every day, you will basically be, I don't know, trickling water for some people. It won't actually reach the ends of the lines for that part of the distribution network. But at the same time, you have people being emotional. And I guess I could say, I don't necessarily fault local government representatives for not wanting to, what's the word? Play down the anger that some of these residents might have felt. But at the same time, some amount of leadership. I know you're not national level parliamentarians, but your representatives, assuming WASA will speak to you, you could speak to WASA to make sure to get clarification and distribute relevant information to the people you represent. I'm pretty sure that's part of how the system is supposed to work. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, of course, I am giving the local government representatives the benefit of the doubt. I'm also giving some of the residents the benefit of the doubt. It could be that the very same people who was fully informed were the people who did the protest just because. And we don't know to what extent people are willing to politicize issues like this. But the frustrating part of it is, when issues like this are politicized, or we live in a country where we're accustomed to them being politicized. So now we question the motives of the protest, right? Either way, it undermines efforts to actually treat with the problem with the best practical solution. Because now you have to answer to the whims and the emotional responses of people, which may or may not be genuine, and which may or may not actually lead to outcomes in their own best interests. This is not something unique to TNT. This is going on right now in various parts of the world. The most glaring example is in places like Baltimore, Seattle, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. area, I believe. Just look at San Francisco. It's not just one side it's the local news, liberal news, conservative news. They're pointing out some big deficiencies because of policies that people wanted and it's actually hitting them. So just be mindful, because governments actually do listen to us. They might not listen to all of the things that we say. They might be listening to a lot of the bad things that we say and then make bad decisions. At the end of the day, there's a lot of problems with WASA. I don't know what else to say about that. Behind on time a little bit, so just want to move quickly. Second story, when we say stand your ground, I think this is an example that might support my case and the ASP's case yesterday. It's not about confronting a situation on your own directly, but rather supporting the authorities to investigate and deal with the situation. Now there's a case where a local vendor who, by all accounts, it does not seem he was involved in anything. There was someone allegedly dealing drugs at the back of his stall, at the back of his area, and somebody stabbed him in the chest during, I hesitate to even say argument, because we don't know if the vendor even reached that point. But either way, whether he did it in a very calm manner or in a very aggressive manner, regardless of that context, he confronted the situation and spoke to the individual. I believe it's reported that he knew the individual. I could be wrong about that. But this is probably a case where, in a time where human life is not highly valued, even if you think you could deal with a situation, I would advise you to rethink that assumption. Because there is nothing in the reports to say that the gentleman, the deceased, did anything to provoke a violent response, much less a response to this magnitude. Now, I could be wrong, because at the end of the day, I'm reading a report by a reporter who is trying to put together statements based on people who were there, and I don't know to what extent witnesses were able to see everything. This is not the type of discussion one would have in the public. Hey, don't sell drugs behind my stall. You're not going to call out a man like that in public and expect him to give you, a reasonable response or a response in your favor. So this is just a lesson to more people. And this is what I'm afraid of. Yes, he did not confront the alleged drug dealer with violence to defend his location, but at the end of the day, that was a confrontation. Just because you having a gun does not necessarily make it much more likely for you to win a confrontation against potential home invaders or other criminals. All right, so last story I'll get into the review here. I find this interesting. The Minister of National Security, he had a lot to say. One of the things that he had to say was calling out the former commissioner for the amount of ammunition that was imported during former Commissioner Griffith's tenure. Now, what is interesting is the response, because Gary Griffith has basically released a statement saying that Hines is wrong and claiming that Hines said that neither the Defense Force nor the Police Service used 7.62 and 5.56 ammunition. Now, I actually tried to check Hines' contributions, and maybe I missed it. The report of Hines' criticisms of the commissioner doesn't seem to be, well, the statement that he said, 5.56 and 7.62, the TT military no longer use. And if it's literally just that statement, I suspect that this is a case where the minister was unfortunately inaccurate in his words. 5.56, 7.62, which the TNT military no longer use. That might apply to the 7.62. Probably not to the 5.56, because I believe, at the very least, both the police and the military use the Israeli rifle, the Galil, which technically could use both. There are versions of both rounds of ammunition. The TNT Defense Force did, I believe, used to use European rifles, which use 7.62. 7.62. But they might have adjusted to 5.56. That has been the standard for ever since the 90s or so. Even the Russians with the rifle that they're supposed to be using uses 5.45. The 7.62 is the larger bullet. The 5.52 is the smaller bullet. It's a logistics thing for militaries. They use the smaller bullet, right? We know that at the very least, some of these rounds are used by the defense force. Because if you buy weapons from any NATO country, any NATO manufacturer, it's going to be 5.56, standard NATO rounds. And then a lot of the arms coming out of American manufacturers use similar 5.56 because that's what the American military uses. Why are they going to have rifles, produce rifles that are going to use some esoteric, unique round that is potentially hard to find, hard to manufacture? I build a gun, you could easily buy rounds for it. As a private citizen in the States, it's a win-win for everybody. So I understand the former commissioners at the Minister of National Security, and if I am incorrect, well then the former commissioner has said what he had to say about Minister Hines. But I do feel as though this was potentially just, the context, maybe in writing it needed a comma to break up the statement. It does bring a lot of questions because AK-47s technically, I don't know if they use the same 7.62. It would have been better if the minister would have been more specific with regards to the types of ammunition he was speaking about. Things like this happen all the time. And claims like what the Commissioner of Police makes happens all the time. That's where you get statements where politicians lie. All right, I'm not going to say politicians don't lie, but I'm going to say that there are a lot of times where politicians either inadvertently or potentially on purpose obfuscate the truth, leave out important details, or just speak in generalities so it's harder to pin down what they say. And in this case, I don't really see the purpose of the minister being less accurate in how he brings across his message. And the flip side is, if some sort of games are being played here, this is not the time to do it. And more importantly, in the debate, there's at least one other instance where I found this quite tiresome. You're blaming the former commissioner. You're two commissioners after him. It's not as though we've seen hundreds of thousands of rounds being used. So for the most part, we could have had a situation where that didn't happen. An excessive number of rounds were not necessarily imported, and we would still have the level of violence that we have now. Trying to shift the blame on your predecessors, and like I said, there was another instance with regards to, I don't even think it's connected to anything current, but I could be wrong, where one minister was trying to blame something on the UNC while we're in the environment of the national debate on the budget. That was then. This is now. So while I praise the minister for his communication yesterday and apologizing to the public about the high level of crimes, this blaming somebody else that it's not you, it's not your current commissioner, that's not, it doesn't work. To be fair, he didn't go all in like Gary Griffith did with regards to the language. So take that for what you will. But let me leave things here. I'm over time. Let's leave things here. When we come back, I'll welcome the new guest. Well, the new old guest, or the old new guest. You'll decide which one is right when we come back. Stay tuned.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Let the home store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
You gave us the inspiration to be first. We gave you the solutions that put you first. You walked with us side by side, and we continued to serve you with pride. First Citizens celebrates with you 30 years of achieving dreams, shaping success stories, and painting brighter futures together. And together, we'll accomplish so much more. First Citizens, together, 30 and beyond.
From Maracas Bay to Arapita Avenue and Piaco, Richard's Bake and Shag brings the world's most popular fish sandwich closer to you. Open daily at all our locations.
Alan's Funeral Home, Tunapuna. Relax. We know the loss of a loved one can be challenging, but we've got your back for all your funeral needs, from documents to the service and/or burial. Let Alan's Funeral Home take care of you and your loved ones. We are located on the Eastern Main Road in Tunapuna. Call us today at 663-1829 or visit allansfuneralhome.com. Alan's Funeral Home. Let us take care of business.
You gave us the inspiration to be first. We gave you the solutions that put you first. You walked with us side by side, and we continued to serve you with pride. First Citizens celebrates with you 30 years of achieving dreams, shaping success stories, and painting brighter futures together. And together, we'll accomplish so much more. First Citizens, together, 30 and beyond.
Are you ready?
We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready.
Friday. Fridays just got more important. On Friday, October 13th, Trinidad and Tobago's national football team battles Guatemala in a crucial Nations League encounter from 9 p.m. at the Hazley Crawford Stadium. A victory for the Soca Warriors will guarantee us a place in the quarterfinals with a host of possibilities, including the prestigious Copa Football and a World Cup seeding. Calling one and all to the National Stadium on Friday, October 13th. Let us fill it with noise and let the support reverberate. Tickets cost $100 covered, $50 uncovered. Tickets are on sale now at eboxtickets.com and at the venue from 12 p.m. on match day. Show your true colors. Be a fan. Be the ultimate Soca Warrior.
We're ready for the road.
Welcome back to Talk About Ladies and Gentlemen. And I did say we don't have the good lady herself here today, but we have a surprise guest. He's a new old guest. Well, not even a guest. He's the new old co-host, or the old new co-host. And of course, I'm speaking on one and only, Mr. Keaton Shaw! Keaton Shaw!
Who is that?
Free Keaton Shaw! He's free, folks, at least for a day. He got out on good behavior.
Highly unlikely. You're lying to the people there. But good morning, Sean, and good morning to all viewers. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I've sat on this particular set.
And it's been a long time since we had a discussion on air. Now, we've spoken about the budget kind of in passing here and there informally, but we haven't necessarily had any deep dives on many a topic on air. So there's one topic that came up, and I think, you know, we could tie it back to the budget to some extent, but something that you pointed out, which I actually missed completely, I'll be honest, and that is the Minister of Works and Transport. He has announced a new transportation plan, because there haven't been one since 1967. And we have not had a plan. That's what he says. He says that the vision for transportation is planned to carry hopefully 20 to 30 years in the future, but he's cautioning us to say, well, it's not necessarily going to save on traffic. But we have to keep trying to innovate, and I guess, you know, the assumption is to alleviate the situation, to not, you know, just give in to the situation.
Well,
but
we haven't had a traffic plan since 1967. The minister has highlighted that, and the government, under the Ministry of Works and Transport, is already going to pay to have a new plan. He said it'll be available within 6 months' time at a cost of US $120,000. Now, a traffic plan that doesn't help a situation with traffic, what is that then? I'm not entirely sure. I'm rather confused. But
sorry. It's a transportation plan, I think. It's not, I don't know if he used the word traffic plan. Did he use the word traffic plan?
1967 transportation plan.
There we go.
Traffic, yes, but you have to also understand, whilst the word was not used, based off of the conversation and in the context of Trinidad, any transportation plan in TNT has to deal with the traffic situation. Traffic ties into many things, mostly in regards to productivity. And it's terrible that especially for people who are coming from Central and South to Port of Spain, and then from Port of Spain back to Central and South, even from East to the West and West to the East, you know, vice versa. It's absolutely terrible. It's always congested. So a big part of any transportation plan has to be dealing with your traffic. Now, the minister says hopefully this can be, you know, a plan that could work for the next 20 to 30 years. And that's a bit short term for me, especially given the plans spoken about by the minister and those who are part of his team, Hayden Phillip, who is the director of the Program for Upgrading Road Efficiency Unit, the PURE unit under the ministry. And the reason why I say it's a bit short term is because a lot of what's been focused on are roundabouts. Yeah. Now, in terms of globally, roundabouts are now something that are of the past. Let's just put it there. Yeah, roundabouts are not necessarily focused on now. You've got a lot of underpass, you've got a lot of bypass, just generally speaking, globally. Now, we are a small island, don't get me wrong. So that might be the most effective thing. Most recently, I think the newest roundabout, at least I could recall, is the one in the west. Yes. You know, you're exiting West Mall, and that takes you either into Chaguaramas, into Digger Martin, or back up into St. James, you know, back up the highway. And to me, that roundabout was not really the best. That you know, and there are people who agree with me and there are people who disagree with me, and possibly because most people in Trinidad and Tobago just don't know how to use a roundabout. Right? Well, so it's not in that context, in that aspect, it's not really the fault of the contractors or the workers, right? But most people in Trinidad and Tobago don't know how to use a roundabout. But the roundabout, in my opinion as well, was just poorly positioned and planned. Apart from that, if you take a look at generally across Trinidad and Tobago, our planning and our infrastructure, and it ties into the road networks as well. The minister said that no way in the world are you going to find a city that has no traffic. And I understand that. There's no city in the world that does not have traffic. If we were to use Port of Spain as the example, compared to the two cities that we have, the city of San Fernando and the city of Port of Spain, understand that Port of Spain has so much traffic lights, short distances between each other, that contributes to the traffic. That contributes highly to the traffic.
Well, not just that, but also there's technically a highway where a lot of those traffic lights are not through,
right.
but essentially through Port of Spain, right?
So
it's off to the side, but still.
So that's one. And we've spoken about this before. The number of traffic lights in Port of Spain, and even the length of time these traffic lights decide they're going to switch. But that's just one example. If I take a look at another heavily congested area, if I take a look at Endeavour, for example, in Chaguanas, you've got, first of all these buildings that have gone up, all these new malls and whatnot. I'm not against development at all. What I'm against is poor planning. Those are agricultural lands to begin with. We shouldn't really have all those, malls, and everybody's opening up a mall now. It's like, Oprah, you have a mall, you have a mall, you can have a mall. Everybody's opening up a mall now. And again, nobody's against development. That does help with the economy, but then you're neglecting agriculture. You're blatantly neglecting it because in the middle of all this, you have this nice building known as the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, right? That's occupying space in the middle of all this, but nothing to do with agriculture. That's a side topic. But the point is, you have all these developments taking place, but you never have a road network or transportation plan to deal with that traffic when patrons obviously go to these institutions. So you have a planning for this big mall and this big land development. You don't have a planning to deal with a plan to deal with the traffic at all. And that is where we've been so short-sighted. You have to understand that development is not necessarily just putting up a big building with a fancy design and the nicest of glass and oh, well, you like to put it with all the plants and the lighting and all that. That's just not development. Part of development is what you do with your surroundings as well. Green spaces is part of your development plan.
Well,
right? Again, different subject, but it all ties into transportation because with all the traffic that people face, you lose time in terms of productivity. You lose time in being able to get jobs done. You lose money. You're burning up a lot of fuel. And to me, I support any transportation plan so long as there's critical visionary thinking. But based off of what has been suggested, I can't say it's visionary. It's just a temporary thing.
So some of the things in the, this is 2024, public sector investment program. It's things like what you said. We want to improve what's there already, right? Like the transportation hubs, maxi-taxi facilities and stuff like that. It does not necessarily speak to the fact of, now they also include the PTSC, which I think is a good thing. It doesn't necessarily speak to the fact of, right, what is going to alleviate traffic or help with the flow of cars, which indirectly also alleviates traffic. Because there is, yes, there's the roundabout there, but there's supposed to be a planned interchange in Digicel Martin, which will be semi-useful because at the end of the day, while it will help traffic flowing west, right, and potentially, okay, traffic that, it only really is going to help traffic flowing west. When people leaving Digicel Martin are coming east to go to work on a morning or east to drop their kids home for school, the same bottlenecks that existed before are going to exist again, and that is going past Cocorite. There's only so many lanes, right? Yes, you could go St. James or you could go on the highway, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a bottleneck as cars are also filtering from Glencoe, further west, etc., West Moorings, etc. They're all going to meet and they're all going to be, they're just going to have a pileup of traffic that's going to take a while. The interchange is not going to really make a difference. Roundabouts still have their place, but not on highways. So I know in Tobago, there's a roundabout where at least one young lady lost her life. And I question the roundabout nearby Westmoor, although technically there was a traffic light there, so people should be accustomed to stopping. But there's always a chance where somebody, whether they're inebriated, whether they're ignorant of the roads, and they just, they don't see it in time and an accident happens. If the roundabout is literally right smack dab in the middle of the highway. So the design and placement of them and when they are to be utilized, because you're right, on a major highway, you don't want a roundabout, you're asking for disaster. A highway should allow you to cruise at a certain speed, faster than a main road, faster than a side street, etc. And we need interchanges. We don't necessarily see any intentions to greatly expand that, But more importantly, I think mass transportation like the bus service, if it was not only more reliable, but also expanded. Because there are parts of the world where big businessmen use subways and, well, more than buses, but if the bus service was good enough, they'll use buses too. In New York, just because you have a car doesn't mean you use the car. And taxis are expensive over there, so they don't always want to use a taxi.
You want to know an example of just of a nation, and I know people don't like when you compare, Trinidad with other nations, right? But look at Singapore, for example.
That example is like classic right now. I think then was it today or yesterday with Martin George?
No, I know.
On AM Prime. But no, I also get it too. From multiple areas.
I say look at it because it's not necessarily something ideal, but it's a plan that has worked. And what Singapore implemented was a certificate system where I think every week or every 2 weeks they have an auction where they auction off certificates in order for you to purchase a vehicle in Singapore, right? So in other words, not everybody in Singapore owns a vehicle. Singapore's population, I think it's smaller than our population actually. But the thing is, what they've done is that they've encouraged the use of their public transportation system,
yes,
which has been a very effective and efficient service.
Oh,
in
no,
fact,
their population is bigger.
Right, good. Thanks for that correction. I think it's a landmass.
Yes,
yeah,
right? I think so too. Which makes their congestion crazy.
So thanks for correcting me on that. It's a landmass that's smaller than ours. The population is bigger. You're absolutely right. Because I think the capital is actually one of the most densely populated areas in the world. And it adds to the congestion that you just mentioned. But they have this certificate auction in order for you to purchase a vehicle. Now, that is you purchasing just a certificate to own the vehicle.
Well, for the right too.
Right.
This is not the owning out.
You still have to pay for the vehicle,
right,
for all the taxes, right? And I think
insurance and everything.
And I think right now, the base price for one of those certificates is $120,000 US. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Right. But the point is, because Singapore has this efficient transportation system, they're able to promote that and push that, and people happily use it. People also happily cycle to work, right? Difficult to do that in Trinidad. We all know that for very many reasons. But the point is, if you had this level of vision and thinking, and the reason why I use the example of Singapore is because Singapore had no natural resources. They still have no natural resources. In fact, the argument in Singapore is, this is why we have such a strict judicial system. We can't have people stealing from others on the road, whether it be from a cell phone to a piece of chewing gum. We can't allow that. We don't have resources, and therefore, whatever it is that we do have, we have to protect, we have to cherish, and we have to allow people to enjoy it. But the point is, at the end of the day, if you have this level of planning, and given the amount of money Trinidad and Tobago has made from all its natural resources and from the wealth associated with oil and gas, it just goes to show that in the year 2023, a transportation plan in 2024, to me, again, I can't say it's visionary. I can't say it's innovative. But I can't say it's going to help the situation. You're still going to have traffic. You're still going to have a traffic situation.
And I think you kind of alluded to it yourself. A lot of these things seem to be too short-term thinking, and what we'll gain is minor. And I think the key points to understand is it's not tackling the most critical areas of need. One is the public transportation service, which you just mentioned, and it's been a thing on this show that we've called out. But I think ultimately there are three key choke points which need to be addressed. Two are more important nationally than the third. The third one, the least important, is the one that I mentioned earlier. It's cars coming into Port of Spain west of St. James, right? And maybe you could even include St. James as well, because of the bottlenecks coming in once you reach that part of Cookery there. Remember, they had the sinkhole just before peaks, and that caused major traffic all the way into Woodbrook one afternoon. But even more importantly, it's the choke point of cars, of people coming into Port of Spain from the east on a morning, right? That's one area of traffic. But then also there's the choke point of cars going south. And I don't know coming north if you're going to have the same problem, because I've never experienced that coming north in the morning. But cars going south in an afternoon, you go from 3 lanes to 2 lanes once you hit Chagonas. And that is that little thing.
That causes a
that
huge
little
choke.
thing, right? Just does so much with regards to the southbound traffic. If you could solve that and traffic coming into Port of Spain from the east and going back east on an afternoon, if you could, and it's not only going back east, it's just it coming in. If you could solve those two things, the amount of alleviation of traffic we would have would be ridiculous. And it would do more than anything that I think the minister has mentioned.
So I see a hand and I raise you because I'll do you a bit better. Heading west, if you're coming from Central over that Grammaza flyover.
Right, yeah.
Right? So you're coming from Central.
Yes.
Onto the highway, and then you're coming east as well, heading west. Those are 4 lanes that
meet. Of course.
Those are 4 lanes that meet. And then as you are approaching El Socorro right there, it turns into 3 lanes.
Yeah.
And that point right there is a choke. That causes a lot of traffic.
Yeah, just one lane lost.
So you get 4 lanes into 3 lanes. That's a choke, right? Now you do get some relief. I must admit, you get some relief from just about from about the solo suction factor on the highway.
Right.
Come up to about probably just as you're approaching the traffic lights by the market, right? So as you start to reach NP, you start to experience traffic there. It starts to build up there. There's a slight relief, very minor. But then you go from those 3 lanes to 2 lanes on Racing Road.
Yep.
Which again, so you've gone from 4 to 3 to 2. And this is what I'm saying. Development cannot be only about putting these high-rise buildings or these big shopping centers and having this plan for this cinema complex or whatnot. No, you've got to think all around and holistically. We have not done that here in TNT, and that is also a part of the problem. You don't want to know what's another part of the problem in Trinidad in terms of what causes traffic congestion? Yes, you have people who simply can't drive. I don't know how they get their license. I don't know where they get their licenses from. I honestly don't know, all right? But it's just like they just decided to play Grand Theft Auto, and yeah, I'll just go do my driving. I don't know what happened. But you also have a lot of vehicles on the road that somehow or the other have inspection stickers, but crikey, even sitting in it is a death trap. I've seen vehicles, I've seen trucks, I've seen cargo trucks whose tires are completely smooth.
Well,
there's no treading on the tires at all, and I've seen that on vehicles as well. I'm seeing vehicles that belong on hospital beds because they're falling apart, and they're allowed on the road. And the quality of those vehicles, people are trying not to drive behind them. They're trying to overtake. And then these vehicles sometimes either driving extremely slow on the highway, like really, really slow, which is why there's a possibility that you need to have the minimal speed limit. You have a maximum, maybe you need to have a minimum as well, right?
Well, on the highway, that actually could be a safety consideration, right? To have a minimum speed limit, for sure.
So because it's just, I can't understand here in TNT where people are struggling, because if you get into an accident with one of these vehicles, your insurance company in Trinidad doesn't care about you. There's no insurance company in Trinidad that cares about you or will really be on your side. But at the end of the day, still, it's a lot of headache, it's a lot of stress, and people who are trying their best to keep their car running and maintain their vehicle and paying the money to maintain their vehicle, when you have these half-dead vehicles or three-quarter-dead vehicles or vehicles that just don't belong on the road at all with inspection stickers, that's also a major part of the issue. And these transportation companies, these cargo trucks that have ridiculously smooth tires, smooth as a baby's bottom, probably even more smooth. The fact is, they don't belong on the road, and yet they're there, and they're speeding.
And they're speeding.
And they're speeding.
I want to go back and tie this back to a point that you made earlier when you said a certain, was it Endeavour, where there's a lot of buildings coming up.
Yeah.
And, what about the transportation plan for the flow of traffic into and out of those areas? And generally speaking, you can apply that to other parts of the country, obviously, as certain areas south of Chaguanas gets built up, right? That choke point still exists, and it's going to affect traffic, because at some point, if you're in Central, you're going to want to go north, right? You might not have to go north every day, but let's be real, a lot of traffic is going to want to go north in the morning and going to come south in the afternoon. So to get home, or to get to work, you might be in problems. There's a new suburb development there, very, very high and posh and what have you, right? Okay. But then there's also the fact, to tie it back to a different topic, there's also water and electricity infrastructure. And I think this is one area where we need to realize that our water supply, I'm not necessarily going to give WASA the full benefit of this, but the water supply is in an uphill battle.
WASA doesn't give anybody the full benefit of anything. Why are you giving them the full benefit of yours?
Because as these developments continue, where's the planning to ensure that the infrastructure, not just for transportation, but for water, electricity, garbage collection, etc., maintenance of the roads as these new things go down? Because we have the tendency, yeah, we'll build a thing. We don't plan how it integrates with the rest of society, and we don't even always have a plan to maintain the thing that we build, right?
And you're absolutely right.
Wait, as more suburbs come up, what's the plan for the fire service, right? Should the fire service have a thing? Well, no. If we have this, and traffic and water supply and stuff, we might not be able to serve this community properly. We might either need to build another fire station, which we can't outfit right now with fire trucks. They're waiting to be cleared. Allegedly, I don't know if it's enough.
It's two.
Right, exactly, right? I think the association mentioned like 3 to 5 stations which don't have enough equipment. That's service tenders, and there's other equipment shortages. And what other critical service, government service, is also in a situation with regards to police service coverage, with regards to, communication, logistics, all of these things. So there's no planning, and we're building, and then we want to know why are we congested, and why are there shortages of everything?
In regards to water, don't get me started on water. The Water and Sewerage Authority, it still can't believe we refer to them as an authority. But yes, Transvago has been facing extreme heat over the last few weeks, actually. Probably the better part of the last 2 months at least. We've been experiencing some extreme heat, right? This has to be, in my memory, at least recent memory, the driest wet season. Well, the hottest. It's dry. It's barely been any rain, and we've had a couple freak storms. Was it last week or the week before? We had a couple of freak storms across Trinidad.
Well, one was from a tropical wave, but one was from the heat. Right? The heat caused the rain.
So it's incredible, and this is where WASA needs to understand that there needs to be some level again of thinking or opportunity. Take a look at Catalan, for example. Catalan is facing a drought. They haven't had rain there for how long? Spain, on a whole, actually is facing water situations. But what they've done now is that, again, it's because of planning. And yes, you're talking about countries that have bigger economies, possibly because of better planning and productivity as well. Productivity as well.
Yes.
Ties back into everything we've spoken about. But they're also implementing systems where they are now recycling water, right? Recycling the use of water. Now, people in Trinidad might not want to hear that.
What?
Right? But if you ever were to do your research and realize what is taking place throughout the world in regards to recycling water and how that is being used, all of that is part of our problem. Our water catchment in Trinidad is ridiculous.
I think that's the bigger one.
You build a dam and you say,
I think at the end of the day, if we're suffering from floods, it's not rocket science. Now, maybe it's complex on where you do these things, the location, but if we're suffering from floods and we're suffering from not enough water in our water table supply, you increase the amount of canals and drainage you have, not out to sea. You don't just let it go out to sea, but you have these things to catch the water and have it in a reservoir.
You brought up TNTech as well. I'm asking a question because I know we'll go to a calling segment. Is it just me, or are people throughout Transvago, you the citizens as well, are you experiencing some serious surge in your electricity supplies? Because I've had some ridiculous surges. Even the electricity has dipped. Not only does that not help at all in terms of productivity, but it also helps with you losing more money through your appliances actually just saying, I'm not prepared to deal with this.
The irony is, if we have surges like this now, if we don't have the proper planning and infrastructure in place, when solar comes online, these kinds of dips and these kinds of surges might be even more commonplace because of the inconsistency in supply.
But I'm also taking a look at about a month ago, TNTech actually issued a statement saying that this is the most electricity that we've ever used in terms of, since we started actually collecting data and analyzing it. And I realized that they put it out there, the cost of electricity and the cost of natural gas and the natural gas supply. Everybody in Trinidad now is scrambling to buy AC units because of the heat. It's, even at night, it's completely still. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I understand why people are doing their very best to scrape together the sense that they have in their pocket to buy AC units. So you have to bear that in mind. We don't necessarily have the infrastructure to produce the electricity we need, or even to maintain the grid. Bear that in mind.
Actually,
we've had this in the last few years.
I would argue that we do, because our position would be a lot better if government could pay its own bill to TNTech.
I think part of the problem, well, not part of the problem, I mean, we have some of the cheapest electricity in the world. No argument about it, right?
Yeah.
So that in itself, great, wonderful. But when that release came out, I remember reading it and thinking, hold on, isn't the Regulated Industries Commission actually doing, meeting people throughout Trans-Tobago as they were deliberating about an increase in electricity rates? And I thought to myself, you know, it's not going to be announced in the budget, but this release from TNTech, focusing on the electricity supply and the cost of natural gas and the supply and all that, I think very soon we have a hint that electricity rates are going to be increased.
To be fair to TNTech, because they said they don't even know what's going on with the increase, but I believe somebody, either in TNTech or an association in TNTech or whatever, basically said, well, you know, if, you know, the biggest help would be if the government would just pay off its $1.4 billion debt to us. So, right? That, because the RIC said, well, we estimate that we could make up a $10 million revenue shortfall if we increase the rates, or something to that effect. The point is, $10 million ain't compensating for the government owing you $1 billion on a regular basis, because that seems to be an ongoing rolling figure. As they pay off their debt, they still manage to maintain a $1 billion debt.
So, I have not been here for what, 3-4 months? Probably more.
It's been a while.
And there's a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Because,
there's a whole other topic, which to me, the heat also ties to concerns over children, schools that don't have AC units, because this is true. I think, at least in the short term, AC units might become a necessity for survival, because health-wise, I cannot survive in the heat.
Hey Sean, you want to hear something?
What?
In some government offices, if the AC not working, the staff go home for a day.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
So I wonder what that means for schools.
What does that mean for schools?
In some government offices, if the AC not working, we send you home for the day.
It's true. So, but school children have been going to school, at least in a lot of public schools, without AC forever.
And ladies and gentlemen, I haven't had the opportunity to say so a while. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. We can hear from you there. Back.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Trinidad and Tobago student safely evacuated from Israel amid escalating conflict. Altercation between teenager and a 56-year-old man leads to hospitalization. Quick response prevented injuries at UWI St. Augustine campus following a fire. And internationally, UN Secretary General said he was deeply distressed by the current attacks in Israel. Now for the details. As the conflict in Israel continues to escalate, Trinidad and Tobago's Minister of Foreign and Caribbean Affairs, Dr. Amory Brown, has confirmed the successful evacuation of a Trinidad and Tobago national who was studying in the region. Dr. Brown chose not to disclose the student's identity, respecting the wishes of her parents. However, he did mention that she was a teenager pursuing her studies in Israel. By 4 p.m. on the previous day, the teenager had been successfully evacuated from Tel Aviv and was en route to London. In a report, Dr. Amory assured that Trinidad and Tobago's diplomatic staff would be present to meet the student upon her arrival in London. and ensure her safe journey back to her mother's embrace in Trinidad and Tobago. A dispute between a 17-year-old boy and a 56-year-old man escalated to the point where both individuals had to be hospitalized as a result of injuries sustained during the altercation. According to investigators, the incident unfolded when the 56-year-old man paid a visit to his girlfriend's residence on Irving Street in Pittsburgh at approximately 5 p.m. It was during the visit that a heated argument erupted between the man and the 17-year-old resident of the same house. As tensions escalated during the exchange, the older man produced a knife and inflicted a single stab wound to the left side of the teenager's face. Subsequently, the man fled the scene, making his way through a nearby pathway leading to the Eastern Main Road. However, he was pursued by a 24-year-old acquaintance of the teenager. Armed with a cutlass, the friend confronted the older man and inflicted injuries to his head and hand. Both the 17-year-old and the 56-year-old man were transported to the hospital for medical attention following this altercation. At approximately 11:24 a.m. on Tuesday, October 10, 2023, campus authorities were alerted to a fire incident involving 4 vehicles at the JFK staff car park, situated on the southern side of the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus. We can confirm that no individuals have sustained injuries as a consequence of this incident. In an immediate and coordinated response, the UES State Police, the campus incident management team, and the emergency volunteer team rapidly sprang into action, calling on the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, who quickly arrived to contain the fire. University personnel will continue to support the authorities, and a full investigation into the cause of the fire is underway. Vehicle owners impacted by this incident have been contacted directly by our emergency response team to address any concerns and provide support. Internationally, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Monday he was deeply distressed by an announcement that Israel will initiate a complete siege of the Gaza Strip following an attack by the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas over the weekend.
To discuss the unprecedented developments in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. Let me begin by repeating my utter condemnation of the abhorrent attacks by Hamas and others against Israeli towns and villages in the Gaza periphery, which have left over 800 Israelis dead and more than 2,500 injured. I recognize the legitimate grievances of the Palestinian people, but nothing can justify these acts of terror and the killing, maiming, and abduction of civilians. I reiterate my call to immediately cease these attacks and release all hostages.
Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for watching.
Since they were on sale, Laura bought these umbrella shoes without thinking. Literally, without thinking. Hungry for deals? You'd better come and satisfy it at KFC before doing something crazy. Wow Bucket. 7 pieces of chicken and 4 regular sides for $115. A finger-licking good deal.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Are you ready?
We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready.
Fridays just got more important. On Friday, October 13th, Trinidad and Tobago's national football team battles Guatemala in a crucial Nations League encounter from 9 p.m. at the Hazley Crawford Stadium.
Are you ready?
A victory for the Soca Warriors will guarantee us a place in the quarterfinals with a host of possibilities, including the prestigious Copa Football and a World Cup seeding. Calling one and all to the National Stadium on Friday, October 13th. Let us fill it with noise and let the support reverberate. Tickets cost $100 covered, $50 uncovered. Tickets are on sale now at eboxtickets.com and at the venue from 12 p.m. on match day. Show your true colors. Be a fan. Be the ultimate Soca Warrior.
We're ready for the road.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, if you've been watching the show, the good lady herself, she is not here, but don't worry, we'll have her tomorrow. However, you know who's here? I'll tell you who's here. He's back, folks. Keith Shaw's back. Time to open the 4 lines. You know, now you can call in and ask Keith any questions, because hopefully this is not going to be the last time in a long time, but no guarantees for when next he'll show up. So get your questions in quick. He's on the hot seat, folks.
You'll be kind and gentle, please.
Nah, no kind and gentle.
Be kind and gentle.
Come on, tough questions, whatever you want to talk about. Of course, there's a lot happening around the world, but there's still a lot happening in TNT with regards to my concerns of the education system, my concerns over safety for children. You also have those concerns. I don't know if you've had the chance to kind of speak about that on AM Prime.
No, I haven't had the opportunity as yet, because there's so many things I'm trying to cover on AM Prime, trying to be a bit different on mornings. But what I've been noticing a lot more is the school children associated with, I don't want to use the word crime or criminal behavior, but there really is the level of disrespect coming from school children in TNT that is appalling. It's ridiculous. I think one video was circulating recently of this, student disrespecting a teacher.
Yeah.
And then I believe the mother of that student actually responded, and she's saying that we mustn't blame parents. Please don't blame parents. I try hard and this and that and whatnot. Now the thing is, I have this thing where I can't fault the student for a certain behavior or approach if this is how they were brought up, right? I don't know what's taking place in the household.
Yeah.
Right? And not everybody is as innocent and as sweet and as kind as they portray themselves to be. It's basic, right? But I'll pause on that and we'll get back to that in a moment.
It's a big topic, folks, and it's ongoing here. But we do have a caller on the line from San Fernando. Just so you know, the phone lines are up and you can see it on the bottom of the screen. We have the first caller, San Fernando. You're on the air. Good morning. Caller?
Hey, morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, Keaton.
Good morning.
I see Sean's hashtag has worked. Free Keaton Shah, so yes, I hope it wouldn't, if it's only one day. I would like to comment, Sean, I would like to go back to yesterday.
Okay.
With ASP Ali.
Yeah.
There were 2 callers, myself and the professor.
Yes.
Who kind of challenged ASP Ali. Our professor said about enforcing the laws.
All laws.
And I asked him that question about internal corruption.
Yeah.
And dealing with it. And as I said in my contribution to him, leading up to that, the blue wall went up, Sean. I was disturbed by ASP Ali's response to both of us, to both our comments. And therein lies the problem. He went back to talk about if it is that the police enforce the laws, that he used traffic as an example, that there are no cars on the road, so to speak. And that is not the point. That is not the point what the professor is saying. That day of policing was a day to show force. That the police said, oh, this is what we could do. Okay, use that example in a meaningful way. That is what we want to see. We want to see that in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
To deal with situations. And I was very disappointed in him because he did the same thing that they do. They put up their wall to protect themselves, rather than take some criticism, some constructive criticism. Quickly, I really had to get that off my chest. I had asked Karen about several months ago about the function of, what is the function of the Ministry of, Planning and Development.
I remember that
and
question.
That ties into just what you're all talking about this morning here. Planning and development seems to be non-existent in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of from the government level, specifically with this transportation problem you all are speaking about here, because it is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Because what we are experiencing is we need to be able to have mass transit systems where we can move large amounts of the population from area to area with less footprint on the roads.
Yeah.
And they are not doing that. The other thing that ties into that is our urban development, or our development. They are building housing projects along the traditional routes, and they're just getting more the population. They're just building up those population centers bigger and bigger. San Fernando is an example. San Fernando and environs. Sean, it is so ridiculous. Let me tell you something. I have to go and pick up one of my daughters from school on an afternoon, and that school is in San Fernando proper. That school over at 2:30, and I have to reach there the latest. I just want to say the latest 1:45, and to get a spot to wait, and she has, and I don't go into the thing. She has to walk to meet me. It is that ridiculous that we are not planning. In that instance, let me say this quickly. In that instance, there in a 500-meter radius, there are 6 schools in San Fernando. 6 schools.
Yeah, 500.
In the middle of that now, they're putting the family court. In the middle of that, they're putting the family court right now. Just around 3 of those schools, to create even more traffic. And that's the problem. There is no planning in this country. Have a good day, then.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller. That was a good laugh.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 623-9376 is not working.
Oh.
I think it's not working. So
okay.
You may see the number on your screen. We'll try and sort it out for tomorrow. But because my directors are saying no, they think it's working. I called 623-9376 a couple of times, and I'm not too sure what's going on.
Well, there could also be a connectivity issue
could possibly
with the service provider.
Yeah, well, I mean, oh God.
So I just want to say this. I will say, when you responded to the professor, I don't know if that was the blue wall, because I think that was a practical consideration. What he can say is there's a lot of legislation that needs to be cleaned up for the police to be effective. He can't come out and say that because he just can't. But I could say it, right? There's a lot in a lot of various areas. Some of the laws are just outdated. Some of the laws are not practical. With regards to his other response that you didn't like, well, I'll leave that between the ASP and yourselves. Maybe you could call another time. We have a caller from Digicel Martin. We'll speak more on translation later. Good morning, caller. Morning, caller. You on here?
Hello, good morning. All right, okay, so...
Well, we have 2 callers from Digicel Martin, but we should have at least one.
Hello, good morning. Could you hear us? All right, hello, could you hear us?
Hi, you on here?
Hello, have you all heard me? Good morning.
Yes,
good morning.
Welcome back, Kishan and Mr. Sean Paul.
Good morning.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
On my side, it's breaking up.
We can hear you. Go ahead, make your contribution.
Right, a couple of things I want to discuss. And one of the first things is the utterances of the Minister of Local Government. I'm hearing that he's quantifying now waste. And I want to put it in perspective. And I do want to say we have a government whose governing policy is waste is part of it. Because one of the sitting MPs and minister is capitalizing on waste management and disposal of waste in the HGC sites. So that is a perspective that waste people are profiteering on it. And we cannot avoid what is the governing principles of this government. What are they trying to basically tell us? And I'm listening to a lot of debates at the same thing. It's a back-in-time government, continue to blame in the back. This morning I'm hearing about another attempt on the deputy.
Hello?
Caller? I think this caller. Well,
all right, caller, I think
we might have lost them.
You can call back in to finish off your point. We apologize for that. We do have another caller from Dick Martin in the meantime. Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Keaton. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. Good morning, Mr. Shah. Anyhow.
Good morning.
Guys, thanks. I want to go to our newest, oldest war, please, between Israel and Gaza.
Yeah.
So today is the 4th day, and there's a complete siege on Gaza, which has already been under siege for 16 years. No water, no electricity, food, fuel. Hospitals are asking for an SOS from the world. You know, thousands killed, 240 or so children. But here's the thing. They've told them to evacuate, but they've blocked the exit, so there's nowhere for anyone to go. The Rafah Pass between Egypt and Gaza is blocked. All 8 refugee camps are being bombed. You know, people, including journalists, have moved 6 times. There's simply nowhere to go. All of this is against international law, but just for context, 1 minute. This marks, next month, November, marks 76 years since the UN declared there should be 2 states for the Arabs and Jews in 1947. Before that, it started in 1917, though, the agreement. But we see that Netanyahu is not interested in this because his last redrawing of the map did not consider the Palestinians at all, and they've been dispossessed for 76 years, occupied for 56 years, and now they feel they've been neglected by the international community. The big problem here, as always, is the hypocrisy of the West, who sees the Hamas attacks as terrorism, Israeli attacks as self-defense, and because they've normalized this occupation, this is the important thing, this apartheid and colonialism, this ethnic cleansing, until the world does something about Israel's occupation, until the West holds Netanyahu accountable, until Palestinians have their properties and their freedom, this is never, ever going to end. It will go on for another 100 years. So, again, the West. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much, Kolo.
Well, I want to say, I don't even think those things matter. I think the things that matter the most are the people on the ground. And part of it is the Israeli people themselves. They need to want to not condone this and approve of this and allow this to happen. But at the end of the day, there were massacres, I believe, on both religious and ethnic groups even before Israel existed. So to say who started it, I think is a lesson in futility.
I think what it is too, what they call from Digicel, the point that she's making, and I actually could appreciate the point that she's making. The UN actually asked that Israel remove the blockade on the Gaza Strip. I think about 2008, 2000, and around there. It's when they had asked for that to happen. That has not happened since. There is also a blockade not only on the land border, but Israel controls the airspace over the Gaza Strip as well, and the sea, of course. So I think what the caller is pointing out is that even though there's been resolutions for a 2-state system in this entire conflict, you have to understand that, and I agree, at least in regards to the Western media, people are focusing a lot on the symptoms and not the cause.
No, but
and the thing is, because they're focusing so much on the symptoms and not the cause, and I think people are also forgetting history. Maybe they just weren't taught history, and maybe they've just been taught what people want them to learn or what they want them to know. But there's so many sides to this story, and I understand what the caller is saying. The Western media has focused mostly on one side.
No, I understand that, and I've actually even seen debates between media members. I think MSNBC had a member disagree with some of on air with regards to more objective coverage, right? Ironically speaking. But the point I'm making is, all of these things are influenced by politics. And in this case, the politics that matter the most actually is the politics internally to Israel. Because right now, Europe probably does not want to have to get involved. They have their own situation to deal with. And then the other thing is, Israel is probably not going to really listen to anybody because America actually cut them off once before. And it didn't really make a difference with Israelis' view of the world or view of their world in that corner of the world. And that's why I said something has to be done there. The rest of the world can say what they want, but Israel probably won't listen for better or worse because to some extent they're still reliving Munich and 1948 and the Six-Day War and all of the times when terrible things happened to them, and they're willing, because of that, to inflict terrible things back on people and keep the cycle going. And at the end of the day, what Hamas did was horrific, right? But as one reporter in the States pointed out when they were debating this same point on the coverage, it's like, listen, just because what Hamas did is horrific doesn't give Israel a free pass and means what they're doing is fine. And in some ways, it's very impractical.
And that's the thing. You're right. It doesn't give Israel a free pass. So this thing where there's been a total blockade.
Yes.
That does not help the situation. You have to understand.
Telling people to evacuate when there's a blockade.
Yeah, and you've got, again, the Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. It's 2 million plus people.
According to one
living
reporter,
there.
I think it might be an embedded Al Jazeera reporter, but I can't remember which, because I've seen so many things about this, you know, especially yesterday. Half of the population might be minors. Close to half might be minors, right? And at the end of the day, if I was Israel, I would want them to leave. If I have an security issue with them being there because of the proximity and all of the history, let them leave. But the fact that you're not letting them leave, I think is where now Israel's response goes from being brutal to making no logical sense at all.
And the whole world is so divided once more over this conflict, this war, whatever you'd like to call it, however you'd like to look at it. The whole world is so divided. And nobody is talking about how it is we're going to find a solution to bringing peace so that all sides benefit. Nobody is focusing or even asking that question or thinking about that.
We've reached the point where the current generation involved in that conflict, the current generation of Hamas fighters and the current generations of Israeli fighters, they weren't there when this started. This started before World War II. This started like in the 1920s, 1930s, maybe even as I think the caller said, 1917.
This actually goes back to Roman times.
Well, yes and no.
Historically speaking,
right?
Yes.
Because on one side you have the claim of, well, the Palestinians were here, we owned the land. We literally owned the land when Israel was dropped on top of us. And Palestine was not cooperative at all. Of course, then you have the fact that, yeah, but the Jews technically, they built Jerusalem, right? Who has the historic claim? And I think at this point, it's kind of silly to go into that. The real issue to me is, it's not as though I have an issue with you and we could work it out. The issue was with people who lived 50 years ago and died 50 years ago. And now the people that came after them are just continuing this blood feud. And I hate to say this, but I don't expect peace to be forthcoming anytime soon, because I don't really know of any situation where this type of ongoing long-term hostility and hatred for the other side, it's basically amounted. It's not even necessarily about Judaism and Islam. It's literally about this nation and the other and their neighbors, right? Not agreeing to the existence of each other.
I agree with you that it will be stupid and probably ignorant to think that a peaceful solution will be found.
Here's the problem. Usually situations like that end with one of two ways. One side is wiped out or both sides are wiped out. Or decimated to the point where they just cannot continue hostilities. And the latter probably is not going to happen. It could happen, it's probably not going to happen. The former might happen, and then the question is, on a practical level, what can the rest of the world do about it?
Anyway, Sean Michael Small, it's that time of the day where...
Yes. You actually have
Actually, yes, I had the opportunity to interview the Israeli ambassador to CARICOM. He's actually ambassador to Panama, a non-resident for Barbados, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and CARICOM. I had the opportunity to speak with him, and that was on AM Prime at 6 o'clock this morning. It's actually being repeated right after this show. So at 9:30, you can see that interview again on WESN. You can also see repeats of it at 6 p.m. This evening and at 9:30 p.m. tonight. Please, if you have the opportunity and the time, watch that interview. And that, need I stress, that's just one side of a story. That's just one side. That one nation, one state speaking about this side. And I had the opportunity to ask questions. I did not actually take a position where I wanted to condemn one side nor attack a side. In this, all parties involved. I simply asked questions, he gave his response, and if ever I get the opportunity to interview anyone from Palestine, I would love that opportunity, would welcome it and would appreciate it. And you know, I'll do my best to try and work on that and you know, get that. Because you have to hear all sides. You have to hear all sides in this story. So if ever I get that opportunity, which I will work on, definitely I would welcome that. But this is just one side of the story, and if you get the opportunity, you can listen to it at 9:30, which is just in about a minute and a half's time.
Well, allow me to just give my final word. This, to me, is a symptom of the economic recovery the world is going through. We saw a coup in Myanmar. We saw military action in Africa, military action in Central Asia, right, with the CTSO. Of course, Russia invading Ukraine, Eastern Europe. More of this could happen, and we need to be cognizant of the fact because, again, as I pointed out 2 budgets ago, what are we ready for to deal with? What emergencies can we handle? Do we have enough in the tank to handle it? The HSF is one reserve, but are we just going to be willing to wipe that out? Because things can get bad globally. Israel and Palestine is just one more hotspot, and there could be more. And those things, like Ukraine and Russia, could eventually come back and affect us. China, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, all of that, some people are just waiting to see who lights the match. However, Mr. Keaton Shah,
when all is said and
close
done,
the show.
Yes, when all is said and done, no matter what, we always have the pleasure and privilege of you joining us on Talking Point, and it's first time for me in a very long time, so I'm glad to be here. It's not going to be the last. It's not going to be the last. Hopefully, that hashtag works a bit more, and you'll see me more often.
Hashtag we save the Keaton Shah. See?
Sure, Michael Swell?
Yes.
Today is a good day to have a good day.
Ah, there it is, folks. There it is.
And we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Hello there, and thank you for joining me. The Israeli-Palestine conflict, well, that has claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people and displaced millions more. Israel has declared war on the Gaza Strip following an unprecedented attack by the militant group Hamas on Saturday morning. Hamas fighters have killed more than 1,000 Israeli citizens. And in response, Israel, through bombing the Gaza Strip, have claimed the lives of over 800 Palestinians. Furthermore, a blockade on the Gaza Strip announced on Monday has also cut access to essential commodities such as fuel, food, and medicine. Well, the world's eyes are now sharply peeled as to what is to come next in the coming days and in the months. I am joined by my guest this morning. He is His Excellency Itai Bardov. He's the Ambassador of Israel in Panama and non-resident in Barbados, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and CARICOM. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining me and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Keaton. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you. I want to say hello to you and to your viewers. And just before we begin, if I may, I just want to refer to what you referred. First of all, we haven't declared war on Gaza. Our war is on Hamas. It's not on Gaza, and Hamas is not we don't see it as a militant group. It's a pure evil terrorist organization, no different than ISIS, and it should be definitely referred as so. But I just wanted to clarify that it's really important, because these terms have meaning, and we have no war with Gaza. But definitely, we are right now in an armed conflict, an ongoing dispute with the terrorist organization Hamas.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that clarification. Now, serious, violent escalations, these are not uncommon, especially since Hamas has had greater influence on the Gaza Strip since 2007. How is this conflict different to those that Israel would have experienced previously?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. In 2006, Israel left the Gaza Strip unilaterally. We uprooted families and homes. We uprooted graves, and Gaza was entirely under Palestinian sovereignty. Where we were hoping, and we were applauded by the international community at the time, we were hoping that the Palestinians would take advantage of that situation to build and to construct. Unfortunately, what happened was that Hamas took over in a very bloody coup, killing other Palestinians, throwing them off rooftops, dragging their bodies in the streets, and have been raining, have had a reign of terror in Gaza since then. We've had our cycles of conflicts with Hamas since then. Mostly it starts when Hamas fires rockets into Israel, and then we retaliate in order to prevent the rockets from being fired and so forth. However, what happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history. With our 9/11, and if you compare it in proportions, it's much bigger than 9/11. Not is it only proportionally larger. I mean, it's because we are a much smaller country than the United States. The brutality and inhumanity is just unbelievable. We are talking of, hundreds of terrorists who infiltrated civilian populations, homes, families' homes, and different concentrations where civilians were living and stationed. And we are talking about raping women next to the dead bodies of their friends and then murdering them or parading them naked in Gaza, kidnapping children, grandparents, mothers, Holocaust survivors, people who are over 85 years old, kidnapping them, taking them into Gaza and hiding them in bunkers and in areas, of course, without any access to any international organization, lawyer or anything, committing atrocities that are unbelievable, murdering children, babies, just committing war crimes. It is something that the world has not seen, or in maybe very small instances, and it is a game changer.
Mm-hmm. In that sense as well, Israeli intelligence capabilities are considered to be some of the best in the world. Yet this seems to have been a coordinated attack with time to plan. How does this surprise escalation reflect on Israeli intelligence capabilities?
You're right. The Israeli intelligence capabilities are very, very good. But unfortunately, and as we've learned now, no one is perfect. They've been planning this for a long time, probably for a very long time, made sure that it's kept in very close circles. I don't think they didn't even mention it to their own terrorists before the attack occurred, and they only very shortly before it explained exactly what is going to happen. This has been an intelligence failure. We have to admit it. It has been, but I can tell you, this was a very big mistake by Hamas, and no one can really understand the rationale behind it, because they did it, they hurt us, they committed atrocities that are unbelievable, but they knew that they are going to pay a very harsh price. They knew that Israel would do anything it can to defend its people and its citizens, and it will cost a very severe price for Hamas, and unfortunately will just bring more casualties on both sides. So I cannot explain the rationale behind this. I think many times when it comes to extreme ideology, no one can really explain the rationale. But but we did have a failure of intelligence. It is something that we will look into, we will learn, and we will make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future.
Is it also possible that domestic political divisions could have also accounted for the timing of the attack, and therefore also in the context of the conversations, have such divisions been set aside for a more united approach from Israel in dealing with this conflict?
It's difficult for me to say. It might have played a role, but let's be frank. In the past, it didn't prevent, even before this internal, dispute in Israel. Even before that, Hamas attacked Israel in the past in different ways. They did. This might have been planned even before what we've been seeing in Israel. It might have been going much longer. And these demonstrations and so forth might have played a role. I don't know for certain. I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question? I'm sorry?
If such political divisions, domestic political divisions, have now been set aside for a more united approach.
Oh, well, first, absolutely. Israelis are absolutely united in confronting this terrible, evil organization. Actually, we've had volunteers coming from all over the world, Israelis who say they want to come and assist. The military is getting much more reservist than it was planning to get, because people are horrified, are shocked, are overwhelmed, are devastated. And we are one united country, whether you're left-wing, right-wing, secular, religious. We are absolutely united country now in face of this evil.
Mm-hmm. Geographically, the attacks came from the south of Israel, although there have also been hints of escalations from the north. In that sense, you've mentioned that Israel is prepared to defend itself at all cost. Is Israel also prepared for more escalations geographically from various regions within the nation itself?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you're right. Unfortunately, we have some of the worst neighbors in our region that in any other place around the world. Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy, a terrorist organization of themselves, a very cruel organization, might want to take part in what's happening. We are 150% prepared for any attempt by Hezbollah. I think Hezbollah knows this, and I would warn Hezbollah not to try anything, because we are very, very prepared to retaliate in any case of an attack from their part.
Well, the leaders of the United Kingdom, the United States, France, Germany, and Italy have all released a statement expressing steadfast and united support for the state of Israel and the unequivocal condemnation of Hamas. How crucial is this international support in Israel's defense and operations?
Well, first of all, the support that we are getting from the whole international community is just amazing. It's very consoling. It's very helpful. And it is very important. It's very important that the world comes and says this is not an Israeli or Arab or Palestinian issue. This is a human issue. It's human beings who were faced with the worst evil that can be imagined, and that have been, going through the worst atrocities that one can imagine. This has nothing to do with politics. It's a basic human issue. And it is very important. I will say, Israel's first responsibility is to the well-being, security, and safety of its own citizens. So even if we would not have received the support, we would do anything that we need to do in order to ensure the safety of our people. But the support is important. It is very well received. We are very grateful to it, and it comes from all corners of the earth. We are very appreciative of the strong, steadfast support from the international community.
Within the last few years, Israel has seen a normalization of relations with Arab League nations, Morocco and Bahrain, just as an example of a few. Also, is this conflict a reflection of the new reality of diplomacy that Israel is currently undertaking and undergoing?
it's not for me to dissect exactly what Hamas's intentions and motivations are and what the reasons are. They're a fanatic organization that officially declares that it is thriving for the destruction of the state of Israel, not even for any kind of dialogue. They just want the extermination of the state of Israel. So I don't know, but I'm sure that they are frustrated to see how well Israel is doing in the region, how we are strengthening ties with Arab countries, whether in the Middle East, in Northern Africa, how we are, making peace agreements with other countries. And this might have played a part in it. It might have. We will continue to strive for peace and tranquility and normalcy with any Arab country, as long as, they recognize Israel's right to exist and Israel's right for security.
Also, sir, if we were to take a look at the wider world, what are the broader and long-term implications? What does this mean for the rest of the world?
I think the world now has understood what we're facing. They understand what Hamas is, and they understand, Hamas is, if we spoke about ISIS, so now Hamas is ISIS. They have no limits, none. They are willing to do anything. They have no regard for life. They're just representing a very extreme and fanatic ideology. They are not representing the vast majority of Muslims or Arabs around the world, for sure. And I think the world understands that. And right now, Israel cannot allow itself to enable Hamas to keep or to maintain its capabilities. So this is a game changer. It has affected the Israeli society in a very large way, in a very meaningful way. However, it also has sentenced Hamas to a terrible future. I mean, we will not be able to allow Hamas to continue threatening Israelis. That is over. We will do whatever is necessary to make sure that our citizens, our population, our children, our women, our elderly are safe.
Now, according to initial estimates, it suggests that over 150 civilian hostages were taken captive by Hamas. Hamas has threatened the execution of these hostages should Israel Sorry, I'm going to repeat that question. According to initial assessments, Hamas has taken at least 150 civilian hostages captive. They've also threatened to execute these hostages unless Israel stops the bombardment of civilian homes in the Gaza Strip without warning. Noting that you've just mentioned the protection of Israeli citizens, and you've also really focused a lot on women and children, is the safe return, the rescue of these hostages, currently a primary focus?
Well, first of all, I want to just mention, Israel is not attacking civilian homes. We're attacking Hamas operatives. Unfortunately, what they do is they hide behind civilians. They use them as human shields because they have no regard for anyone else except for themselves. And as collateral damage, when we try to prevent, firing rockets or to try to get a Hamas leader, sometimes there are civilian casualties. We try any effort we can to prevent casualties by civilians, but Hamas hiding in mosques, in homes, in different areas is a big problem, and it does bring casualties also on the civilian side. The hostages is an enormous issue. It's a huge problem. And you mentioned yourself, they're threatening to assassinate them. They're threatening to execute them. I mean, who are we dealing with? Of course, it's a very important objective. And I'm not, the government will have to decide how exactly it's going to be dealing with this very sensitive and complicated issue. But this is not going to prevent us from, making sure that Hamas is not a threat anymore in the future. And I really want to ask you, I mean, do you think it's anywhere in the world, is it rational that they have hostages who are 2 and 4 years old or 85-year-old grandmothers? Is that logical in any way? They have to release them immediately, without any condition. But we know who we're dealing with. We know that we're facing a huge problem, and the government is looking into it and will make its decisions on regard to this very delicate and sensitive issue.
Well, the Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated areas in the world, with an estimated 2 million residents. The blockade announced on Monday actually will cut the supply of essentials such as medicine, food, water, and electricity. Is this the best move in the interest of all parties involved, especially noting that Israel is not attacking civilians? However, this cut in supply will obviously affect civilians. Is this, of course, the best move?
Well, first of all, I need to fuel can be stopped from entering. We are not stopping entry of food and medicines, but I want to emphasize one issue, one very important issue. The border that Gaza has is not only with Israel. They have a border with Egypt, the Rafah border, and we are in no way in control of that. So if they need to get supplies, they can get it. We have closed our border. Just in the last few weeks, following this terrible attack, we've enabled tens of thousands of Gazans to enter Israel, to work in Israel, to provide for the families. We have no issue or conflict with the Gazan people. But unfortunately, right now, this is the most dangerous area for us. We had to close the border. We are definitely allowing supply of basic essentials, medicine and food. But as I mentioned, there's another border with another country, so we are not the only port of entry into Gaza.
Your Excellency, Professor Victor Friedman of the Jezreel Valley College is quoted as suggesting this horrid situation is still an opportunity. Is there still a potential for review of the ongoing conflict in its entirety from all sides involved?
It's very early to say if it's an opportunity or not. Right now, we are really overwhelmed and devastated from what has happened. I think there is now it's an opportunity in the way in the sense that the international community understands that Hamas can no longer have power or be in power. Something has to change. There's a clear understanding in the international community, and so right now that's the opportunity that I see of making sure that this terrorist organization is not a threat in the future. I pray, like everyone else and like all Israelis, that we, have peace and have a tranquility, and we find a resolution to this conflict. But right now, our focus is making sure that Hamas is not a threat anymore. And I have to tell you, Kitan, everyone has to know this is going to take a long time. We're now entering a ongoing armed conflict, and it's going to take a long time. And I hope it finishes as soon as possible with as little casualties as possible. But just imagine Trinidad and Tobago, God forbid, were attacked by a terrorist organization, had thousands of its population, of its people killed, raped, murdered, kidnapped, 2,600 injured. A lot of them are in serious condition. Just unbelievable. I don't think Trinidad and Tobago would say the next day, okay, let's have a dialogue with this terrorist organization. We cannot allow them. We just cannot allow them to continue threatening a civilian population, and that might be an opportunity.
Now, there have been calls from various quarters within the international community, inclusive of CARICOM, and CARICOM has released a statement calling for the immediate ceasefire and the end of all hostilities from all parties involved. As you just mentioned, we're hoping that this ends in the soonest possible time with the least casualties, of course. Is there still a possibility for a peaceful ending? Could there be a peaceful end, a peaceful transition from this conflict?
Well, I'm very disappointed with CARICOM's statement. I think that, that this is an automatic response of the both sides. You cannot refer to this to the both sides. this was an unprovoked attack against a peaceful, peaceful communities. By the way, was within even if we talk about the 67 borderline, which the whole international community says, is part of Israel, no matter what happens, they were attacked within that area. And these are, most of the folks that were attacked are members of kibbutzim who are pro-peace. This is something that, we cannot accept, and we cannot. This comparison of both sides, would CARICOM allow any Caribbean nation to be threatened by such an entity that could, in any minute, could come and slaughter hundreds of thousands of its population? How can you speak about both sides? How can you do it? We are a democratic state. Our government is an elected democracy. We're a liberal state. We yearn for peace. We've given up in our history. We've given up vast pieces of land for peace. We gave Egypt back. We gave Sinai, which is 3 times the size of the state of Israel. This comparison or this two-side issue has to end. It has to end. There's no comparison between a democratic, peace-loving, sovereign state and a terroristic, bloodthirsty organization, whether it is ISIS or whether it is Hamas. That comparison is just ludicrous, and that statement was very disappointing, in fact.
It has to end, Your Excellency. How does it end?
Well, right now, it will need part of it bring it to an end will have to be through a military conflict, because there's no one to speak to. Hamas in its manifest calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. Hamas has proven that it has no limits whatsoever, no disregard to human life. So right now, part of the solution is a military solution, undoubtedly. What happens in the near future afterwards, I hope we can resolve this in a peaceful manner, but only after we make sure that Hamas is no longer a threat. By the way, we would like the Palestinians to govern themselves. We would like them to concentrate on building their own institutions, in strengthening their internal issues, and not focusing on eradicating the state of Israel because they are unhappy that there is a non-Muslim entity in that area. This has to end.
Your Excellency, I want to thank you very much for joining me and for your time in disseminating the information as well as Israel's position currently regarding the situation. We are sending all our thoughts and prayers to all civilians involved, and of course to all military officials involved in the operations as well. I thank you very much, sir, for your time, and I wish you all the very best to you and to the people of Israel.
Thank you very much, Kitan. I appreciate it. And I just want to say, this is not, don't look at this as an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. First of all, it's not against the Palestinians. We are now at war when conflict was Hamas. But this is first a human issue. And all human beings should stand by the innocent civilians that are being attacked by terrorists. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it was a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Take care.
Take care.
WESN.